Hello readers and writers, I'm MJ, and today we're going to be talking about my May wrap-up. So before we get into the total books read for May, I wanted to do a wrap-up specifically for the May the 4th Be With You readathon. And for this readathon, I picked out 6 books to read. The first is a science fiction book, and I picked out Star Trek Picard Second Self. I did not read this. However, I did read a lot of science fiction books that would count towards this prompt. So technically, even though I didn't read this book, the prompt was complete. The next prompt was to read a non-fiction book, and I picked Still Just a Geek. And I started this and then switched over to the audiobook because, I mean, it's Wil Wheaton, and is there any better audiobook narrator than Wil Wheaton? And I felt like I had to read it in his with his voice, and I'm 100% glad that I switched over, because there's things in the audiobook that aren't in the actual written book because of the time difference between them. And so I'm glad I own the physical copy of the book and can see it. I'm also very glad that I'm reading it first in audiobook. It took me a little bit to get away from the library, so I have not finished this book. I'm only about a fourth of the way through, so technically this prompt is not complete. The next prompt was to read a book that's similar to another, and I picked Our Lady of Mysterious Elements, and I did finish this book, so this prompt is complete. The next prompt was to read a book with nature on the cover, and I put The Trials of Coley, and I did finish this book. Amazing series, which I'll talk about more in the actual wrap-up. And so this prompt is complete. The next is to read a book under 250 pages, and I picked Deft. I did not even pick this up, which is ironic because it's like the shortest book on my list, but I got bogged down with arcs, and so this one did not get read. However, I did complete the prompt because I read Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. So while I didn't finish the actual book I selected, the prompt itself was complete. Next was to read a borrowed book, which I picked Iron Widow because I was borrowing the audio version from the library, and I did read this book. So technically I did not become a Jedi because I didn't finish a nonfiction book. It is what it is. I still came fairly close, I guess, but considering, it was kind of an epic fail on my part. Because for the total month of May, I ended up reading 14 books and 5,188 pages, so it really was just that I didn't prioritize the books on the readathon. Not that I didn't read books. But I did read a lot of arcs in May because there's a lot of books releasing in June, and you can go check those out on, I think I have 2 vlogs up by the time you're seeing this, and I'll have a third vlog up shortly. So I read 1 large book, so a book over 500 pages, and 3 of the books were shorter novella length, and then the rest were all between 300 to 499 page books. So 14 books and not bad size either. But I did read all fiction this month. I did not finish a single nonfiction book, and I really would like to get better at that because I really do like nonfiction reading. The vast majority of the books I read are science fiction, partly because I want to get more into science fiction, and a large part because I got approved for a lot of science fiction arcs. And then followed by that is fantasy, and then LGBTQIA books. I read a lot in digital this month, again, because a lot of them were on ARC. So if I read an ARC that is a digital art, I will mark it down as the digital copy of the book when I read. I read less audiobook this month. I just wasn't quite feeling it, but then also reading Wil Wheaton's autobiography. It's actually quite a long book, so even though I didn't finish it, so it's not counting, it did take up a lot of my listening hours this month also. And I just didn't sit down and listen to audiobooks, like why play video games and things that I wanted to do, because we went out a lot more, and it's just in general has been a busy month. But I had a lot of really good reads, some not so great reads, but a lot of really good reads. So I'm going to go through the books based upon what I finished first. So the first book I finished this month is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, and this completes the first Mistborn trilogy. So now I get to move on to the next saga, which I know is not everyone's favorite, but I'm still really excited to start it. But I absolutely adore this trilogy, and if you have not started Sanderson, I think the Mistborn trilogy is a good way to get into it. In fact, I think if you're just wanting to get into fantasy in general, the Mistborn trilogy is a good way to do it. Not because there's any less depth to this series, but because I feel like it's just a little bit easier to follow, and the magic system is just so cool, but also not like so over the top that it's hard to like completely understand it. So the way this book ended was fantastic. If you follow me on any other social media platforms, you probably know I was gushing about the ending forever. And I can't say anything about it because it would completely spoil the entire series. So read it so that you can talk to me about it, because wow, it was amazing. I listened to this on audiobook, and I rated it 5 stars. Next, I listened to Iron Widow, and also rated this 5 stars. This book is amazing, and I did not expect that. I mean, I knew a lot of people really liked it, but I also thought that it was probably going to be a little bit too YA for my taste. But this book is worth all of the hype, and when the sequel finally does come out, I'm definitely going to be rereading this one, possibly annotating it, and then picking up the sequel. And if you are interested in knowing why the sequel isn't out yet, you should really go follow this author on their social media accounts. I think they tell an important and useful information about traditional publishing. When you publish a best-selling novel and yet you still can't like buy food for a year after the fact, that is problematic. And the author does a very great job of explaining the situation and kind of calling out traditional publishing on these issues. The next book I read is The 10% Thief by Lavanya Lakshinmarian. And this is a arc that I received. It's a dystopian novel about what would happen if the world was like, society was based upon the bell curve. And so you had the elite at the top, people in the middle, and then those that are just kind of neglected to the bottom. And that isn't so far off, honestly, from a kind of our society at the moment. The book itself has a lot to do with how corporations and how we're expected to work for corporations, and how that's supposed to kind of define our identity and ourself. There's a lot of ableism in this book, but not in the sense of the authors being ableist, but the society itself is ableist. And while I don't specifically think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think the authors specifically intended it to be that way, because it's not addressed that way. As an autistic reader, I absolutely picked up that some of the most concerning things in this society are things that neurodivergent or disabled individuals would not be able to live up to. And that the value of differentness is not accepted in this society. And it's not that far off from our society. It's just definitely put in a futuristic setting, so call out, I think, where we are as a society. I thought it was extremely well done. I enjoyed the writing, and it's definitely a book that I think you should pick up. And I finally read the second book in the series, The Trials of Coley. I love this author. I love their writing style. This world is fantastic. It's like a post-apocalyptic world where there's just not a lot of society left, and so there's problems with actually reproducing, but it kind of presents this generation that has like the leftovers of technology without like the real understanding or access to the understanding of what technology is. And so technology is almost like magic. And I mean, they don't view it as magic, but because they don't have the understanding behind it, it's kind of treated like magic. The writing in this is fantastic. The characters are amazing, and I absolutely adore both the first two books in this series, and I am going to prioritize picking up the third because I want to continue on with how this journey is going to end. It's definitely coming to a conclusion, and I am very fascinated to see how it's going to end. I didn't officially rate this yet for some reason, but it's a 5-star. The next book I picked up is a novella that was also an arc, Nothing But the Rain. And this is I would say it's classified as science fiction, but I would say it'd be more speculative fiction. It's about a town that has rain that takes away memories. So if you're out in the rain for too long, you're going to start losing your memories, and it kind of like the impact of that. And the main character is a retired female black doctor that lives in this small town that has been cut off. Like, the government is surrounding it, so they can't leave. But they're all succumbing to the effects of this rainwater. And if you come into this novella expecting answers, you're probably going to get very disappointed. But if you come into it wanting a very deep, rich, character-driven story that definitely leaves an very impactful story on you and has a spectacular, if not it may not have like a happy ever after ending, but the ending itself is spectacular, and wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but it was perfect. To have so much story in a novella and for it to be told so well, it's so well crafted, and I'm really looking forward. This is the debut for this author, and I'm absolutely looking forward to seeing what they come up with next. But 5-star. Next, I read via audiobook Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments, and this is an urban fantasy book. I would say it's like adult fantasy, although the main character is 14, but it's definitely not YA. I think younger readers could pick it up without any problem, but I do think it's intended to be written to an adult audience, and others could disagree with me on that, but it's definitely not formalistic YA. It doesn't follow the style of YA, and so I think by definition it just kind of goes into adult, and I like that a lot. This is a series that I plan to continue following. I really enjoyed how it developed from the first story, and to see where our main character is going. If you haven't read the first one and you enjoy urban fantasy, it's definitely one I would pick up. Basically, this is, again, a post-apocalyptic world where I think there was a war, and the United States either started it or didn't step in and help when it was needed, which, big surprise. And this is set in Scotland. Yeah, it's pretty sure it's Scotland. And our main character is 14 and can see and interact with ghosts. She was taught by her grandmother. Her mother is gone out of the picture, and so this 14-year-old is pretty much the primary breadwinner for the family. And so she, in the first book, I don't want to go into spoilers, but things start changing for her. Instead of just doing this almost gig economy of doing notes to ghosts, other opportunities start to present, and then this just kind of like continues building on those other opportunities. So I'm really excited for the next book, which I think is releasing later this year, and it's just a great urban fantasy to start getting into if you like that sort of thing. Oh, so my next book is another arc that I read, How to Be Remembered, and I'm not going to get into this too much because I have a whole vlog out on it, and you can go watch that to get more detailed in the moment thoughts on this book. But basically the premise of this book is that every year this boy's life resets and everyone forgets that he exists. And I rated this book 3.25 stars because the writing was mostly good. There were frequent point of view changes that I don't think needed to be there. In fact, were very distracting, and I don't understand why they weren't edited out. And but beyond that, I enjoyed the writing. I think the characters were all very solid and well presented. But I'm going to keep it short here. You can go read the blog for more. Basically, there was just no conflict whatsoever in this book, and I don't understand how. I mean, I do understand how, but it's like, which, anyways, yeah. So, if you want to know more about it, go check out my blog. Then I picked up the novella Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, and this is a sapphic detective novel where there's magic. And it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I rated it 4.75 stars. I think there could probably have been just a little bit more to it, but at the same time, I really enjoyed what was here. And I thought that the development of the plot worked really well, and I really liked the setting and the family dynamics, and I wish there was probably just a little bit more, but even without it, it was still a very solid novella, and I'm glad I picked it up. So, now I have an arc, Translation State by Anne Leckie, and this is part of the Imperial Radich, which I probably say wrong, series, well, world, put it that way. And so if you have ever read her first books, but like Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Mercy, and another one that I always forget, you need to absolutely start with that trilogy first. But I love the world building. I love this world. There is an entire language where everyone only uses female pronouns, and that's just kind of how, like, gender is perceived. And then there's other, like, languages where there is gendered language, but queerness and gender queerness is normative. And then there's this alien race that is so unhuman-like that they had to create basically a hybrid alien type of subspecies to communicate between aliens and this alien world. And so Translation State has this interaction between this sub. It's really mostly about this sub created species, and it's really, I mean, I love this world, so I think anything that Anne Leckie puts out in this world is going to be a solid 5-star read for me. I think that this book, because they're trying to teach humanity to this other character, that there is an explanation for some of this more gender normative language that's just naturally included in the other trilogies, and why I really, really like the naturally included part of it. I do think that for readers that didn't quite get that this will help, like, kind of translate that after the fact. But the thing is you have to read the trilogy to get here, or this book is not going to make any sense. So maybe it's a little too late, but I don't care, because I'm so glad the trilogy wasn't written for them. But yeah, Transition State, 5-star read, epic. And you should read this world in general. And then I picked up another science fiction arc that is a novella prequel to Firebreak, and this novella is Flight and Anger. And I love Firebreak, 5-star read. I do not think you should read this prequel before you read the actual novel, because the novel creates a connection to the world and an understanding of the world, where the novella doesn't explain the world at all. It just is very character centric, and it works as long as you've already understand the world itself. So you should read the novel before the prequel novella. And I think this was a solid 4-star read for me. It was really good. I really appreciated it, and there probably could have been just a little bit more to it. But the novella was written very passively, and yet somehow that still worked, which still surprises me. But you can go find out more of my thoughts on it, because I have a vlog on this one as well. And then next I finished another arc called The Infinite Miles, which is basically like an alternate reality version of Doctor Who, and love this. I said this is going to be like completely underrated and unknown, and while I still am afraid of that, I have seen it popped up on people's lists and social media, so I'm very excited about that. This is a queer book, so it's definitely a great science fiction read to pick up in June, and when it releases. And if you like Doctor Who at all, you should absolutely pick it up. But even if you don't, I still think you should read it. It's just fantastic. I love how they took this concept of Doctor Who and kind of played homage to it, but created an entirely different version of it. And what they did with the world, how they respected history, even though it wasn't the main part of the plot. Gender identity, especially in... Anyways, Infinite Miles is amazing and great, and you should absolutely read it. And if you want to find more out about it, I also have a vlog of it. Next, I picked up In the Lives of Puppets. I had an arc for this, but I am very delayed in reading it, and I have already received my Fairy Loot copy of it. So I love this copy. It's very beautiful, but I still really like the original cover, and I want a special edition of the original cover with sprayed edges, which I've seen, and I don't know who put it out, but I want it. But I'm still very happy with this novel. It's beautiful. This world, I really enjoyed it. It's a Pinocchio retelling with a asexual main character, and I really liked how they explored that in the book and addressed it in the book. I'm pretty sure actually TJ Klune is not asexual, because he's like gay, which are not necessarily mutually exclusive. So, but I'm fairly certain he is not asexual. So I'm assuming he got some sensitivity readers or something, someone to take a look through the book, because I think the representation was amazing. And I've heard from other asexual people that I interact with in the book community that they felt the same way. So really like that. Also, the robots are really funny, so great book. Absolutely enjoyed it. I think I'd probably rate it 4.5 stars. I next read the newest installment in Kim Harrison's The Hollow series. The book is Demons of Good and Evil, and this is book number 17. This is a book that I can't really get into anything about. So 17 books into a series, anything I tell you is going to be spoilers. But I will say that I'm still enjoying the series. The characters are still continuing to grow and change. The world's still continuing to evolve. There's not a formulisticness to the book that can often come when you're this far into a series. Even like I don't feel like there's even like these plot points that the author's like hitting every single time in some of these other urban fantasy series I read that still have growth, but still almost seem like they're still kind of formulistic. This one still doesn't. It still feels kind of fresh. Maybe the series is a little bit long and overstayed its welcome, but apparently not, because I'm still reading them and still requesting arts for them, and was still really enjoying them. So there we go. And I am collecting them. So If you have not picked up the series, definitely start with book 1, and it is the Hollow series, and the main character is Rachel Morgan. And my last book for the month is Kakai, and I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I think it's right, but I could very well be wrong. And this is an Indian mythology inspired fantasy novel that is very female centric, and about a myth in Indian mythology that mentions, I believe, just this female character, and this book's like, well, let me tell you what really happened. And I really appreciate how they, like, I really appreciate that. And just kind of delving more into her life. She is aromantic and asexual. I've heard that she's asexual, but I would argue that she's also aromantic, because she specifically says in the novel that she doesn't like understand like love, and the need to have like that spousal relationship. What she really understands is friendship, and to me that's what the aromanticism is celebrating, or like indication. Obviously it doesn't come straight out and say this rep in the book, because I don't think there would necessarily be words for it when this was taking place. But the rep is definitely there, and I really, really liked it. I think they nailed it, and I really liked seeing rep in a parent that is aromantic and asexual, being one myself. And just like how you can still like follow the guidelines of society, but that doesn't mean that that makes you any less aromantic or any less asexual. The book itself got a little boring for me in parts, but that's a me thing. I mean, overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I am glad I read it. I think sometimes with mythology, I just don't entirely jive with it, but I think this was still a solid 4-star read for me. The one thing that really knocked it down for me, and this is a me thing, but it still really knocked it down, is this foreshadowing. And, you know, talking to people, I get why it's there, but it gave me huge anxiety. And you should not necessarily get anxiety when reading a book. But this, oh, well, blah, 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 this happened or that happened, and, like, and it wasn't necessary, because it, like, makes it so much more dramatic than it ever turns out to be. And I know that's the point, but I do not like that, because I don't want it to be more dramatic than it already is, because now I'm, like, super anxious when I'm reading it. And then we go to the event, and it's like, wait, why did you need to give me the anxiety? That was just, like, I didn't need the anxiety. This wasn't a huge catastrophic event. And so now I've experienced all this anxiety for absolutely no reason, and I don't appreciate that. And that's a me thing. I totally know it's a me thing, but I still don't think it needs to be there. I think the author could have accomplished the same thing without doing that, but I still also respect the decision that it is in there. But I also think it's valid as a reader that it caused me anxiety I didn't need to have. So both can be true. This is my wrap up for May. Overall, I'm really happy with what I read in May. I mean, 14 books is not a bad reading month at all. And considering the types of books that I read also. So let me know if you've read any of these, what your thoughts are. If you want to read any of them, let me know in the comments. And as always, keep writing, keep reading, and until next time.